developing countries because the rich countries cost. That sounds like a really good moral story. But unfortunately, there's a problem. While the developed countries agree that they need to pay for it, it's only going to be a portion, if at all.
Of buildings. It's been about the rebuilding of human lives.
And we need to think about whether we have the time while the government's out there negotiating and think about where exactly this fight would stop at. Do we have the time? Let me illustrate this with a story and make it real for you. That's Sherali. He lives by a river, and when the 2010 floods happened, he lost his home, his cow, and his standing crop. He had to end up living in an emergency shelter for over 4 months. His kids didn't end up going to school for a good 1 year because of different vector-borne diseases.
It's been about the rebuilding
If at that time the government had thought and been proactive and set up the right flood protection at a fraction of a cost, people like Sherali and 200 others like him in that vicinity would not have.
For me, is satisfy the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to satisfy their own needs.
Sustainability for me is a lifestyle.
That we have sufficient for today and enough for tomorrow.
Use something at a rate that does not cause depletion of natural resources.
There is a balance between the social, economical, and environmental aspects.
For me, sustainability is the capacity of an individual, a group, a company, or a country to meet its own needs, projects, or goals without endangering future resources.
Something that has a minimal negative impact, is affordable, and is renewable.
I'm a dietitian, so for me sustainability means more of like something that you can do in a long time. But
it's the way of living, how you embrace the environment without harm.
Making products that are supposed to last a long time and just not putting any waste into the environment.
Nice concept, but it's not really being applied everywhere yet. He's doing something that you can do forever without making any damage.
Preserving our resources or using less depleting methods to cover our needs so that the next generation can cover theirs as well.
You have all kinds of cultures and different societies that live with nature, and I think we need to learn how to get back to that. It's incorporating people with the planet and profit, PPP.
Sustainability to me is life. I don't believe anything can be eternal without being sustainable. It can be about mental health, your company, the world, especially of course.
No, because Mexico imports food and energy resources from different parts of the world.
I don't think Mexico is being sustainable right now, not enough. So we have lots of resources down in Mexico that are not being used the right way.
And I believe that Singapore is being sustainable. Why? Because at the government level, there are many policies and plans in place aimed at achieving sustainability related goals. In terms of the people, I feel like the people are very educated and well informed of sustainability issues.
To some extent, the situation causes people to try and use solar, but it's not really as a drive towards sustainability, but more or less as something that's being driven by the economy. So largely, to a larger extent, we're not sustainable at all.
I don't think my country is being sustainable. We are very far from saying that. There is very little interest in the environmental topics from the government. Continuously degradation on the environment. Local communities are not taken into account into the big projects.
I don't think Indonesia, that's my home, or the Netherlands, I guess I'm kind of biracial. So Indonesia is not sustainable at all. They're really trying now, and I think it's something they're moving forward. But you know, practices like waste management, for example, on the island that I'm from, we burn all our trash because there's no waste management scheme.
And India, it could be controversial to say, but it's not sustainable. Of course, you can see the data and statistics which proves that, because they are not sufficient for the present generation. How can we promise the future? And we still have 1/4 population living without having a food or a meal for one part of the day, or maybe for the full part of the day.
Well, my home country is being sustainable, yes and no, because there are some things like people use in Europe that we don't use back in our country. Dishwashers or even washing machines. People back in my country do it with hands. And to my country, which is a developing country, Bangladesh, people don't see it as sustainable. They just see it as poor living standard. Actually, the city I am from was like marked as one of the most sustainable cities in the world in terms of like not having harmful air particles in the atmosphere in 2016, which is Rajshahi, Bangladesh.
Say that Ireland has some sustainable practices. In general, things are not done in a very sustainable way. In recent years, we have improved a lot on recycling. However, in general, we have a very poor public transport system, which forces people to drive. In addition, we have a large meat and dairy industry, which causes a lot of pollution.
In developing country, Vietnam, so we are, well, we are still not modern or developed. We are working on it. So most of our main focus now is like the people, they're just trying to survive through the day. Unfortunately, my country, Vietnam, is not so sustainable.
I don't think Indonesia is a sustainable country because there is a lot of problem related to environment. We still have or depends our energy on the coal mining, but we are transforming into more sustainable. There is a lot of improvement, I think, in Indonesia currently.
I think it's trying to be, especially recently, but it's not there yet.
I think they're quite sustainable in terms of recycling and stuff like that. Also, well, of course, there's a focus on green energy, but that is, yeah, well, can still need some work, I think. But we still use a lot of products which are meant for short term instead of long term, and they should do something about that.
My home country is the Netherlands, and I don't believe our country is sustainable. I do believe there are some efforts, but we could do way more, especially with, of course, the social power, economic power, money and knowledge that we have. We are really behind in other countries, and I don't understand why.
Not at all. There are so many people at my home country who doesn't care about the environment, and there's a lot of people who doesn't even know about sustainability. And maybe the unmeasurable use of water at homes, farms, and companies around are the worst activity of them all.
Sadly, Bulgaria is not the most economically stable country, and in my opinion that also leads to unsustainability. Like when people are more worried about covering their current needs, they don't really have the time to worry about what's left for the next generation.
The first feelings that come to my mind is sadness, disappointment, and a little bit of shame, because if some other country would have what Mexico has, they would do a lot better.
Sadness and impotence.
So I feel very sad that we are not, in any aspect, we are not really working towards sustainability.
Is sadness. The people who take decisions are focusing on the economic part,
And I actually feel very hopeful and optimistic because Singapore is a pretty young country, a relatively young nation, and we have achieved quite a lot in such a short time.
My emotions or feelings for that part is also not that happy or not that good, because there could be a lot more done in terms of ecological aspect of my country.
To be honest, it makes me angry because my country, Bangladesh, produces a lot of clothes and a lot of other products that is actually made to be exported to Western countries, and like during this process, like the environmental condition is actually becomes very like it is horrible, to say the least. So people don't have clean drinking waters around those areas where like they build factories. They don't have other facilities there. They don't have a very safe and sound environment to live in. So I think like, yeah, angry is the word I would say that to describe my emotions.
I feel sad and frustrated when I look at the social environment and economical condition of Ireland, because their approach to everything is so unaffordable and unsustainable that lots of people can't even get affordable housing. They're forced to leave the country. There's a huge problem with homelessness. And it's frustrating when the country itself is not poor and there are funds. They're just poorly dispersed.
Like a bit of shock because I've been here and I come back. So every time like that, I was like, wow, like this is where I used to live and nothing has changed. But I felt a bit of frustration because like I couldn't do anything, but then I couldn't make change.
Optimistic, but also I feel quite sad.
Well, I feel mostly sadness. There is a lot of room for improvement in that direction.
Overall, when I look at our country, I do get a happy feeling because I do believe that in other ways we are really trying our best to.
It's so sad. I find it really heartbreaking because I grew up on this beautiful pristine island, and to watch it over time, I mean, I think in cities you would notice it too, but I think it's a lot more in your face when it's really full of nature and clean, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's all kinds of buildings and erosion happening and litter and oil spills, and it's really depressing. It motivates me to want to work for it.
What do I think needs to be done to change and to be more sustainable? I think it begins with awareness, being able to make people aware of what sustainability is and what it means for our planet.
Education is needed. Second, we need to change our diet. Maybe the hardest part is to change this consumerism mindset.
We need to change our minds to be able to change the world.
We need to be a bit more realistic and a bit more sympathetic and empathetic towards the situation we're in now.
To adopt. So one method could be implementing a tax on meat so that people inevitably are less keen to buy meat and more keen to buy a plant-based option.
Like teaching and creating awareness towards our upcoming generation, of course our own generation, that how we can implement such methods and integrate it in the society and environment, coming right from your own kitchen, of saving stuff and leading it to a bigger step in the future.
When it comes to Ireland, I don't know what the solutions to the issues are. However, I think that the issue begins where we have a problem with nepotism and cronyism when we're voting people into the government.
We need to change the mindset of the people, but in order to do that, we need to first make sure that they can easily cover the needs, and for that there need to be huge economical changes.
I think we could even be striving more also in other aspects if we took in the environment more into account. I still always have hope and belief that, especially with our generation, that things can change and it will be a happy feeling for every aspect.